everyone, join me today as I paint this gorgeous peacock in watercolor. Supplies for today, I have a pencil and eraser. I'm going to use a Pigma Micron fine liner pen in size 005 for the outline. I'm going to use a Uniball Signo white gel pen for the detail work. And then for my brushes, I've got a size 8 round brush and a size 00 brush for the detail work. I've got my palette of paints, a spray bottle, tissue paper and water. I'm going to start with my sketch already on the page. The link to the free downloadable and traceable sketch reference can be found in the description box below. I did the pencil sketch and then I used my Pigma Micron black pen in a size 005, which is really thin, and I used that to make a discontinuous line outline for the peacock. It isn't necessary for you to do that. If you want to just work on a pencil sketch, that's also absolutely fine. I'm going to spray my paints with water to activate them. I'm going to start with my size 8 round silver black velvet brush, and I'm going to prepare 2 or 3 colors on my palette before I go into the painting. I want to prepare maybe 1 or 2 blues and 1 or 2 greens. This is Cobalt Teal Blue, which is a really nice undercolor blue for the peacock. It also makes some lovely mixes, which is why it's in my palette. So I'm just going to prep that. Then the French Ultramarine, I might just use it straight from the well. There's enough water in there that it is dilute enough. And this is Viridian. I'm going to prepare a green out here. Maybe I'm going to add some Quinacridone Gold to it. Let's just test that on a scrap piece of paper. I quite like that, but I'm just going to increase the consistency. So what I'm going to do in this initial layer is I'm going to avoid the beak, these areas that are going to be lighter in color, and that little bit there, and the eye. For the rest of the bird, I'm going to put some water down so that I can work wet and wet for my first layer. So I'm going to clean off my brush and grab some water, and then just lay water down in all the areas that I mentioned. This is Baohong 100% cotton cold press paper that I'm working on today, and I have taped it to the table, really just to keep it still whilst I'm doing the painting. I don't think that taping was absolutely necessary. This is not going to be a very wet painting at all, but I do find that the 100% cotton paper does take the wet on wet really beautifully, as well as allowing you to do more than one layer with ease. Alright, my water layer is down now, and so I'm going to drop in certain colors in the general areas around the bird's head in quite a light consistency, because I'm planning on 2, maybe 3 layers, but definitely 2. So I just want the colors to move around naturally, blend and overlap with one another. So I'm just getting the colors in their basic areas. There's going to be a whitish area to the bird's neck here, which I'm going to avoid. Alright, so starting with the Cobalt Teal, that's down. Next I'm going to use French Ultramarine. I don't normally work straight from the well, but this is really watery at the back there, so I'm happy to just pick it up and then drop it in. Whilst the water layer is as wet as this, you'll see that the paint really does move around a lot. And that's exactly what I want in this first layer. This French ultramarine is also a granulating color. You can see here already how it is separating because of the larger particles that the paint is made up of. I find it quite a desirable thing in a painting like this, where I am trying to get a bit of texture and for a difference in sort of intensities. But some people do find the granulating nature of the ultramarine paints to be quite frustrating. I suppose it just depends on what look you're going for. I'm not going to extend my color all the way to the end of the wet. I want it to do it naturally. Otherwise, I'm going to get a hard edge along that bottom edge of water. Now I'm going to take the green that I mixed up. If you are getting value out of this video, I'd really appreciate if you could give the video a like and also a comment in the comment box below. Such engagement helps to grow my channel and allows me to continue making more content. And make sure that you subscribe to my channel so that you can be informed of future videos. I can see it is glistening less at the bottom here, which means it is beginning to dry. I think I want to just, let me change it up and use a little bit of Cobalt Blue, just as a different blue. It's also starting to dry in this area, I can see. I don't want it to dry before I've had a chance to put my very darkest blue in, which I haven't done yet. So I'm just going to, with a damp brush, just encourage the mixing here, and also just to put a bit more moisture down. Alright, I'm going to take some Phthalo blue now. This electric blue is perfect for Peacock. I'm going to bring this in at the edge here. It's quite intense. I'm not looking to go excessively dark in this layer because I'm wanting to add texture in the next. So I just need to make sure I get the mixture of colors down that I'm looking for, but that I don't overdo it. I know it's going to dry about 30% lighter than what I'm putting down, because that's what happens when you work wet and wet like this. But nonetheless, I don't want it to get too dark. I'm going to add some of that phthalo blue into the green here, just so that I can get a darker green. I don't want to lose all of the light green that I have underneath. I'm just going to encourage this blending, but also maybe just to lift a bit of that darker green that I've put down. And then I want to get indigo. And this I'm going to be careful with, to just do around the very edge. And also here around the back of the neck. I'm dotting it so that I do try and get a bit of that texture, that feather-like texture, which we're going to try and emulate. Maybe I'm even going to water that down a little bit and try a bit more here at the top of the head. We'll do more of this in the second layer to try and get a texture. But whilst the paint is still prepared to move around in the first layer, I'll do what I can. When it is so wet, you can see how much the colors do blend, that a lot of the dots that I'm putting down don't stay, that they just blend out into the rest, which is fine. That's what I was expecting in the first layer. I'm just going to tidy up the edges around the mouth, just trying to encourage the paint to go all the way to the edge there. Alright, so things are starting to dry here. I think maybe I'm just going to drop here And now it really is drying, so I'm going to leave it now and let it dry and then decide from there. That layer is completely dry now and I'm very happy with how it's looking. I'm going to now try and add a bit of texture into the feathers. I think to do this I'm not going to work entirely wet and wet, because then I find that the edges to my texture marks are a little bit too harsh. So I'm going to work wet and wet again, but I'm going to let this water layer almost completely dry before I come and put my texture marks on. So to get the texture in this layer, I'm going to firstly let the water dry a bit more than I did in the first layer. And also the paint that I drop in is going to have a thicker consistency than it did in the first layer. So both of those combined will mean that I will get a bit more texture and not quite so much spreading out of the pigment when I put it down into the painting. So I'm going to dry and tap off the brush a bit there so that the pigment that I get onto my brush has got a thicker consistency. I'm going to start with the greenish color and tap it in here. So you can see that the paper is a little bit drier and the pigment is a little bit thicker. So as I put it down, it's not spreading as much as it did in the first layer. Alright, now I think I will move to the French Ultramarine. It is still quite wet. I can see how much it is spreading, but my paint is of a thicker consistency, so it's not spreading out quite as much. But I think I will come back and do a bit more there, but let me just get some of this down initially. This looks quite dry. I can't see much glistening here at all. Yeah, you see. I'm just going to help it here. Now I'm going to come back and drop straight back into, so that I can preserve the lighter areas that there are. I'm not going to, the temptation might have been to drop into the lighter areas, but I'm actually going to drop straight back into the center of the dots that I laid down earlier. This is a bit dry down here. Now I'm going to do, oh wait, there, the Phthalo blue. And then indigo. I'm still just reserving the indigo for the very top and back. Because this is drying down here, I think I'm just going to get another brush and put a bit more water in here. I don't want to put too much water down, otherwise I will get cauliflower effect up further up. Just blend this water upwards so that I don't get a sharp edge to it. It's always risky to introduce more water into a layer that you're busy working on. If you want to be absolutely sure that you're not going to get cauliflowering or too much spreading out, then you can let the whole thing completely dry and then come back and do it as its own separate layer. just where anything looks a little bit sharp. I'm just using my brush to soften the edges. Now I think I'm happy with that. I didn't do anything with the feathers in the first layer, so I'm going to do the first layer for that now. I'm just going to take this Cobalt Teal, get a lightish blue base on the feathers that I can work into. I'm almost using this colour as my sort of base watercolour that I'm going to work wet and wet into. Alright, so let me take some of the green. There's not too much left there. Now I think I will take some French Ultramarine. And I think I'll reserve anything darker than that for a second layer on the feathers, otherwise it's all just going to mix together. So I'm going to let that dry and then come back to it. I'm looking at the eye here. I just want to get into there a little bit. Alright, I'm going to let that layer dry. The feather layer is dry now, and I'm going to come in with a darker colour to do a little bit of shadowing. I'm just going to add a bit of indigo to what is already on my palette here. And I'm moving to my smaller detail brush. And I'm just going to put sort of one feather behind the other by putting a bit of a shadow and then blending it out. This one underneath here I'm going to push back by giving it a shadow. Now I'm going to work on the beak a little bit. To do that, I'm going to mix up a little bit of Payne's grey. I'll start with my bigger brush first and then I'll move to the detail brush. I'm just going to put a little bit of colour on the top of the beak here. Very diluted, and then I'm going to blend it out with clean water. I'm avoiding the inside of the nostril there for now. I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to take a bit thicker consistency of the Payne's grey and just drop it in up here at the top. Then I'm just going to get a little bit of burnt sienna. And blend that out. Alright, for the bottom beak, I'm just going to let that dry a little bit. In the interim, I'm going to pick up very, very light green. I just want to get a bit of texture into these white areas. So I've got it very weak and a little bit of paint on my brush, but you can see hardly any at all. And I'm just using the side of my brush to get put a little bit of texture marks in so that this area is not completely white. But this is more just indicating the shadow of the feathers that are in that area. And I avoided the top of the eye here where I shouldn't have. I'm just going to add a little bit of something in there. Okay, I'm happy to work on the bottom beak now. I wanted it to dry because I want to keep this separate. I'm going to be putting some shadow under this, the ridge of the beak here, and I don't want it to bleed upwards. I'll start off with a weakish mix of the Payne's grey on my brush here. I'll add some of the burnt sienna. Then I'll blend. And now I'm going to use the detail brush and do a much sharper shadow where the top and bottom beaks meet. I've got a little bit much there. I don't know if I'm going to be able to lift any of that. So I'm just going to rinse and tap off this brush and see if I can. Otherwise, it is what it is. Okay, that's better. Now I'm going to work inside this nostril here. It's in a bit of shadow, so I needed that also to be dry first before I worked in it. I'm going to just mix this Payne's grey with the burnt sienna here a bit. I'm going to go around the inside edge here. And then I'm going to blend it. And then I'm going to add a bit more, just around where the darkest shadow will be cast. I'm going to do the same now around the inside of this bend here, because there would be a bit of a shadow here. Getting a thicker consistency again, just to drop in here. And this isn't in quite as big a shadow, but it was looking a little bit white. So I'm just putting a bit of something there and blending it out. I'm going to work on the eye now. I'm going to wet the whole area, all of it, and then I'm going to work wet on wet and get some Payne's grey in a thick consistency and do it around the edge so that it blends from a very dark to a light towards the center of the eye. So let me put water down first. Alright, so I'm going to get very concentrated Payne's grey on my brush. I'll start in the corner here and also the back corner here, and then I'll go around the edges. I'm just going to tap off my brush. I don't really want more pigment on it, but I do want to encourage the blending. I'm going to add a bit more concentrated to the outside. And then I'm going to encourage more blending in. It's a bit lighter, sorry, a bit darker than I would have liked around the center. I'm just going to rinse off this brush. I dried off quite a bit because I don't want any blooming, but I'm just going to try and lift that and then just get a smooth blending. Whilst the eye just finishes drying off, I'm going to just do the, I don't know what these things are, for the feathers. I don't want it too dark, just a lightish grey, so I'm just going to mix up what I've got here on my palette. For the eye now, I said I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to wet the eye again and I'm going to drop concentrated Payne's grey into the centre, and then I'm going to let that blend outwards. But I still want a lighter area preserved between the two dark areas. So I'm going to wet, but not too much. Then I'm going to mix up the Payne's grey in a thickish consistency and drop that here in the center. I'm going to take a little bit of the French Ultramarine and put it there. That is plenty. Again, I just want to resist too much blending. Right, I'm going to let that dry before I put a white accent on the eye. It needs to dry completely before I do that. On second thought, before I let it dry, I just want to add a little bit darker in the back corner there so that it sort of matches up with the front. I'm being picky now, but I just think there's a little bit too much light color in the eye at the moment. So I'm just putting water in this back area and then dropping a little bit more there. Right, I'm happy with that. Right, the eye is completely dry now, and I'm going to use the Uniball Signo white gel pen now to do some accents over the eye. These pens are really nice for doing white accents. Just got to make sure that the tip of the nib is not clogged up, so I'm just getting the ink running. Alright, I'm happy with that white accent on the eye. I'm just having a look around to see if there's anything else I want to add or change. I think I want to do more of a shadow under the beak here. So I'm going to add some burnt umber to the blue that I've got on my palette, just to make a darker grey. Just put a bit of water under here to help it to mix. And I think I'll do the same over here. And there's the final painting. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit the like button, and I'd love to hear what you thought in the comment box below. Until next time, bye for now.